Good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar, Understanding the Minds of Maryland Consumers. My name is Dan Petrell. I'm the Senior Director for Strategic Communications for Maryland Realtors. Since 2019, Maryland Realtors has engaged consumers directly about the process of home buying and selling through our site, marylandhomeownership.com. To our members, please bookmark this page and share it with your peers and clients. When news of the NAR settlement arrived a couple of years ago, causing all of us to pivot, adapt, chart a new path forward, part of the marching orders we received from leadership was to significantly step up our communication to consumers. Last year, we took this consumer engagement further by hosting a series of focus groups. With the help of our friends from the Victoria Gillespie Consulting Group, we hosted a series of sessions which focused on consumers' thoughts about buying and selling a home, what they need for their home search journey, even ideas on how we can improve what is provided through MarylandHomeownership.com. So today we've asked Victoria Gillespie and Phil Ramsey from the Victoria Gillespie Consulting Group to review our findings with you to get a better idea of what Maryland consumers are actually thinking. Victoria knows a thing or two about real estate. Before leading her own consultancy, Victoria was a licensed Maryland realtor for more than 12 years, and she also served as Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for the National Association of Realtors. Prior to this, Victoria worked heavily in the financial services industry. But it was while she was at NAR that she was largely responsible for NAR's That's Who We Are campaign, which many of us are very familiar with. Phil Ramsey has worked with Victoria for more than a decade and brings operational and strategic leadership to their combined work. And we are delighted to have both of them here to walk through what we've learned about Maryland consumers and what they're thinking. We welcome your questions today, and we ask that you write your questions down and share them in the Q&A box that you see at the bottom of your screen. Victoria and Phil have saved time after their presentation to answer questions from this esteemed group. This webinar, by the way, will be recorded and you can find it later on our YouTube channel, and we will send all registrants a link to this webinar. So with that, let's please welcome Victoria and Phil as we talk about the minds of Maryland consumers. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Dan. We are thrilled to be here. I always like to mention our great state of Maryland. Before we get started, just a few things. Maryland was proactive enough to engage us to say we'd really like to take the opportunity to gain a direct pulse from the consumer. And we were thrilled to take this on. What we'll do is we'll walk you through our approach, some of our findings, some things to think about in your own business, and then of course we'll wrap up with questions. I can't help. I have a little bit of a teacher in me. I always ask the listeners, listen, you are entrepreneurs. You're busier than anybody I know. Please just make a commitment to yourself that you're going to take one thing back that you can apply to your business that can help your clients on their journey or help your business be more successful. So I just ask for that before we go into this. My colleague Phil Ramsey is going to help me navigate the slide deck and help me through the presentation. Go ahead, Phil.
All right, here we are. The slides are up.
Thank you. So you heard a lot about us, enough about us. I do want to say to keep in mind that this is coming directly. Some of the quotes you'll see on your screen, we actually verbatim put quotes from consumers directly for you to have that nugget for what's top of mind in awareness. I saw a recent advocacy win announcing about the ADUs and things like that that help with affordable housing are what make a difference in the minds of the Maryland consumer. So we're going to jump right in and I'll walk you through the agenda for today, if I may. We're going to start with why we're here, why Maryland felt this was important. And I will tell you the one thing that I've learned about Maryland realtors is they're constantly iterating, improving, and perfecting what tools they can bring to their members and what awarenesses they can bring to the consumer. So I really applaud that because this is a rapidly changing environment, as you're all well aware more than anybody. So we must adapt and change to meet the needs of that changing environment. Number two, affordability. I know this is not new to you, but we'll talk about the degree of which the consumer is looking towards their expert, their advocate, you, to guide them through this journey. Three, what does the consumer want? Phil will spend a lot of time. He's really our tech guru in the bunch. I like to say I'm relationships. He's relationships too, but he's really technically exceptional. So he'll talk to you a little bit about the website. And then, of course, we're going to come back with Q&A. So we won't miss any of your questions. Okay. I don't want to just read the slide to you because obviously you have it in front of you, but I want you to know that, again, we wanted to find out, was there information missing? Was the information we were putting out unclear? Could it be more concise? Could it be more effective? So we really broke this down into a formal process that we titled Consumer Advisory Group to really, and we'll walk you through each of the 4 sessions of what we gleaned from that session. So you have up to the minute what this live audience felt about things. Here was the scope of our engagement. It really centered, I mentioned the Consumer Advisory Group. Some people call it the CAG. I don't like to call it the CAG because I don't like the ending of that, but we'll call it the CAG. It started in our minds to really understand home buying, but we also had sellers included that had some light to share. It is heavily focused on buyers and first-time buyers. However, we did cross over and get feedback in reference to the selling process. We listened to the Maryland consumers and we made sure we had a diverse group, age, geographic, education, etc. And Phil will delve into that a little more directly. We also asked them, we wanted to come back with actionable items that we could bring to the table back to Maryland that could be taken into consideration. And we really wanted to hear directly about those barriers to the buyer's journey. So this is what we'll shed light on as we go forward in this hour. Okay, 4 complete sessions. We did them monthly, and here were the session breakdowns. 1 was affordability, financial barriers, and pay attention to that word readiness because it really comes into play as a huge takeaway. The second session, we brought in the video series, and there was 11 steps to buy and sell, which I believe was facilitated by some Maryland realtors. And we asked for feedback on tone, clarity. Did it help with motivation? The third session we facilitated was all about the webinar content. You know, your new potential buyers and sellers can actually go to Maryland webinars, and we wanted to know how were they resonating? Were they comprehensive? And was the pace adequate for the amount of information that it conveyed? The fourth and final, because compensation was so on everyone's minds, we went through and discussed about, are they clear how compensation works? And then, as you know, there's a tool on the site that says get connected to an agent. And we did a little deep dive into that as well. So those were our 4 sessions at a high level.
Right. So looking at our participants, our breakdown in this session was 3 women and 5 men. We had 1 18 to 29-year-old, 4 30 to 39-year-olds, 1 40 to 49-year-old, and 2 50 to 64-year-olds, with the political affiliations of 4 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 independents. We surveyed 3 African Americans, 3 white, 1 Asian, and 1 Latino, and we ultimately found 3 homeowners, 3 renters, and 2 that were living with friends and family. And the education breakdown was 4 college grads, 2 post grads, and 2 high school graduates. So that makes up our participants for the 4 sessions.
Now, you notice that word affordability, and it's interesting because this has been, low inventory, affordability. This is on everybody's minds. So you may be thinking like, how do I, as a practitioner, control affordability, right? And that's a valid point. What we can do is continue to advocate, as we do in the advocacy department, for policy reforms and things that allow more affordability, less restriction from government so that we can get building permits and so forth. But this is going to put a lens directly on what they were asking from realtors, not policymakers, not from the association. So I hope that you'll pay attention to these pieces, and they may be nuggets that you have well included and incorporated. They may not be. So start thinking about that. 1 or 2 things that's going to justify a return on investment of your time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. And by the way, we are thrilled. We had a great turnout. And that just shows you how amped Maryland realtors are about doing good work on behalf of their clients. So we're thrilled to have the turnout that we have. Phil, I'm all set on affordability. We're going to delve a little deeper. Okay, so when we talked about affordability, rising home prices would ring loud and clear. It's interesting, the quote on the bottom, it's not just buying, selling feels just as confusing because one of our participants was in the process of buying and selling simultaneous. So it was interesting that we caught a lens from that perspective. They talked about how wages feel stagnant, but that cost of living continues. Debt for schooling continues. Many talked about, that being able to fund rent is as hard or sometimes difficult than making a mortgage payment. They talked about definitely there's a huge perspective and misunderstanding that unless they have 20% to put down, they're not buying a home. That was a very loud and clear statement for Phil and I that strategies that are down payment assistance is a gateway of education that they are yearning for. And then again, some were anxious in the buy-sell process. Many believe that negotiations and repairs and all that are important, but they said, we need a partner in knowing that we can begin the journey. Very much about education, partnership, and financial wherewithal. So some of these things that we'll touch on is consumers want accessible, judgment-free education. And I mean, they want financial readiness from their realtor to a degree that I was a little bit surprised. When they heard from a realtor thoughts about, for example, how do I save for a down payment? How do I reduce living expenses? How do I improve my credit or FICO score? Which down payment program might I be eligible for? And what are the restrictions for that? If I moved in a more rural area, would that be a strategy to get more assistance? So what I want you to know was I realize as realtors, you're not quote unquote bankers, but I will tell you what they gleaned when we talked about the financial topics were hope, excitement, and a nod to you can do this. They were very much expecting realtors who will latch on to them early on, couple them with a lender or someone that will work on the credit report. I realize you're not expected to be gurus on every piece, but we know you have the expertise and you've walked through many journeys. So I wanted to share an example that went off in my head as we were going through this journey. Dan mentioned that early on in my career, I was a banker in financial services. I did investments, loans, and so forth. What I learned that when I left banking and became a realtor, people still came to me as a financial advisor. So what I realized was I built most of my pipeline by people coming to me me brainstorming or holding workshops on how do you get ready to buy, right? And if I had to pull in another expert, I did. But it was more the advanced 6 months to a year planning, not when they were ready to buy the house, but when they were ready to start getting their mindset and momentum. That piece of hope, guidance, and wherewithal, because they know you have a network, is what they needed. There were many that could be paying more rent than a mortgage, but they didn't have the confidence. They didn't know what the next steps were. They are looking for hope of the American dream from their realtors, and they are eager to follow the advice, the steps, and the calls to action. So I just can't emphasize enough the early planning of almost hand holding that would build your pipeline up. It is not immediate gratification. And I know every lender in the world isn't designed to do just credit repair and how do we get their rates the best possible for their buying power. But when you have the right lender, who I did, helped me build that pipeline. So I just want to encourage you to lean in, and they are yearning for this information from us.
Okay, so as we got into the website, as we got into more of the education and the need for financial readiness education, the common theme was that everywhere everyone says the same thing. They're all saying they're all actually saying different things. They don't know who to trust. The consumers just struggled with just feeling overwhelmed. Overall, the process still felt very overwhelming to them. It was the most consistent frustration that we heard. They were trying to educate themselves, but they kept getting different answers with different people, different definitions, different steps, unrealistic timelines, unclear picture of the market. And what that tells us was something simple, was that the realtor would become the anchor of truth and must become that anchor of truth to help consumers pursue home ownership. Because it still feels very overwhelming from pre-approval to lending to timing, we felt that realtors needed to step in and provide that little bit of hope.
And I will tell you, like we did the 4 sessions, and if you would have seen the before ability and eagerness to try to get ready for the buy process versus just 4 sessions later, tools from Maryland Realtors and from sourcing and saying a realtor is capable of helping you. It was amazing to watch the possibilities come front and center. So I know that you know how important your role is. It's just interesting to me how to get those first time buyers prepared. They need the wisdom, they need the guidance. Many school curriculums do not go through those basics, and they are yearning for it from you. And it definitely can be a differentiator for you. It can be a network of people, and it's a sourcing of information. Of course, Maryland Realtors is honing in what they can apply to make sure their webinars, their video series, take them through a systematic journey of, okay, now you've done A, let's do B. They continue to want guidance. Give me my little homework. I'll go do it and get ready for the next step. But I will tell you, from session 1 to session 4, to watch the hope, the possibility, and their excitement about the home buying journey was radically different. So it gave us a lot of information. Here on what consumers want from realtors, I guess I just said it. Tell me the steps. Give me 5 things to go work on. Partner me with a lender you trust. And then let's build this. I may not be ready. I may have credit repair issues, right? I may need to save for a down payment, or I may need to refinance something, or maybe I shouldn't have the car at the expense level I have. They're looking for systematic partners through that entire journey. So you and a lender that care to help them provides opportunity and hope where it did not exist before.
And again, this slide captures the critical theme. Again, plain language, simple language, which is something we bring to a lot of our engagements. Consumers want realtors to explain the process clearly, define the terms without assuming what anyone knows. They want to really understand the decision process, understanding what the steps are so that it feels more manageable. And they want to make sure that they feel okay asking questions. They want to be aware that consumers feel embarrassed when they're confused. That was the general takeaway. One participant even put it to say that I feel like I need a dictionary just to follow along, which again, a lot of vulnerability there, but this is where realtors have an opportunity to shine.
Phil, just to echo what you said about acronyms, I will tell you, having worked at NAR for 5 years, we were so caught up in acronyms because there were so many programs to try to distinguish. I will tell you things like LTV, DTI, PMI, all of those things, even all the designations we use, they felt like all that terminology was pushing a barrier between the possibility of them ever buying from as small as that. So if you think about it, like listening to your buyer's presentation, role playing it with someone who's not that experienced. It was amazing that when we watched every term we use, like even contingencies, right? Those words that we assume are understood are not. So we really need to go through our whole process. And I know many of you have buyer presentations, seller presentations. We need to hone them into plain language. The more they can nod their head in, like, I get this, I get this, confidence is ramping up. It is not about signing like complicated words and wowing them with my vocabulary. The information is only valuable if it connects me to my buyer and seller. So I can't emphasize enough to have an objective look at your presentations, and you know it well, you know it inside. The other thing they felt was the truly listening and listening with the intention to understand, not just to rattle off a response. You know how many presentations you like, I know what the question's coming, right? To really back yourself up and really understand what their fear is within themselves, not what your last three clients felt, but what theirs is. So I can't emphasize enough listening with the intent to understand versus to rattle off an answer. And you're pressed. You're the legal department, you're the marketing department, you're boots on the ground, right? You're surviving. Many of you are one person operations. But I just want to tell you, backing up, settling down, getting a face-to-face interaction for them to build confidence versus so much business done via texting. And they're okay with it because the first thing we're going to ask is, what is your preferred means of communication? And we want to adapt to that. But I will tell you, it is hard to replace me seeing eye to eye what resonates with them and what does not. So again, some of you, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but they were so disenchanted with terminologies they didn't understand. They felt like all we were doing was pushing them away from being a buyer or saying, see, I knew I couldn't afford to ever be a buyer. The next, Phil, I know you were moving on and I was still, thank you. So here were what they asked from us. And you say, well, what can I do here? What's my role? What do I take back and put into practice? They wanted to hear specific success stories, both online and from you. They want to hear where you help someone who didn't think they could do it, do it. They wanted to know what steps you did. Do you have a process? Do you have a checklist of the 10 things I can do to be more ready? So they want to hear Marilyn's specific success. They want to hear where you took a first-time buyer who never thought and give them, of course, the people with the least information is typically the first-time home buyer. But we had people on the call that were not first-time home buyers, and they were aligned with this information. Some were, they wanted to see where A young buyer could be ready. Like they don't have to be a 10-year career veteran at a certain job for this to be possibility. And then they also said, and this was even for website, is share some of the things that didn't go well and how they could be navigated. They needed to hear when maybe a home inspection, like you don't want to scare them, but everything does not go as planned. Every counteroffer doesn't get accepted. Like what happened if a home inspection sort of got messy and quasi blew up? What do you do for the journey? So they wanted to hear more about the imperfect journey than just the cookie cutter perfect journey. So they quote want real stories of success that make it feel possible even if it wasn't perfect along the journey.
Okay, so one of the strongest takeaways from the entire series, consumers don't want to finish an interaction wondering, so what now? They really want to know next steps. They want to know a clear, simple next step in the process. Examples would be like, check your eligibility here. Before we meet again, let's gather these 3 items. Here's what happens next. A next step, ultimately, what we learn with them is it reduces anxiety, creates progress for them. And as one participant shared in the group, a next step would make me feel like I'm actually making progress and moving forward in such a daunting journey. So that's what we heard from them as far as what they're looking for.
So they're one step closer to what they thought was impossible now being within reach. And they are looking for those little victories that maybe historically we didn't think were exactly our role because we're not the banker, but it was very evident that being able to bridge that in the journey would bode more successful closings.
All right, so that was our first phase, and now we enter into our second phase of the journey. We want to shift to MarylandHomeownership.com, the core resource that many of your clients reference before they even talk to you. So we ask consumers in our groups to review it independently during sessions 2, 3, and 4, and their feedback provides a clear roadmap for what's working well and where improvements can help realtors even more. So we're going to jump into that now. V?
I did want to say this too. I had shared with Dan in the journey early on. Kudos to Maryland Realtors, to Dan and the team, because we had a person on our call that actually referenced a magazine, mentioned that it was 2 full pages, and was like stunned that what we were talking about was in print. So you know how sometimes we're talking about value stream. What do we get for our dues? I just thought it was very interesting that that individual referenced that 2 page spread and where they could go to for information. I digressed there for a minute. Um, Now we're going to talk about participants' praise and tone and so forth. The good news, and this is where what they loved about the actual site, they felt like when they got to the site that the tone was professional, guiding. It did not feel like a salesy environment. It did not feel like things were getting shoved down their throat. They felt a local relevancy, that it was covering their state regardless. They just felt neutrality. So that did tell us that the branding and so forth for MarylandHomeownership.com is serving a purpose of being one step arm's length. They like that, and they like that a lot. It said, these are again direct quotes, it feels like it was made to help us, not to sell us something. And we all know that. That's that fine line. We want to be value driven, we want to bring service, but we don't ever want to feel like we're selling or pushing. So they overall felt the tone of the whole site came across extremely well.
All right, so consumers want to know exactly where to go for the answers. The resources on Maryland Homeownership continued to echo the confidence that they needed. So we want to just think about what they valued. They looked at the trustworthy resources and that realtors are the ones who can point them there. We want you to understand the importance of the site itself, some of the down payment and affordability programs and assisted programs that came out of the webinar content, the additional live webinar content where they have an option to interact with realtors and community partners. Maryland Realtors' ability to connect buyers to programs, community partner programs, reduces that fear, confusion, and overwhelming feeling. So,
Now, we wanted to just take a minute to ask for those of you on the call before today, how familiar were you with MarylandHomeownership.com? There, Phil, do you want to walk through the poll?
yeah, so if
Thank
everybody
you.
could get their phones out and just hit this QR code, we'd like to just kind of take a look in a live poll and we'll show the results in just a moment. But just take a moment to get online and we want to hear what you're thinking about MarylandHomeownership.com. So let's just take a few minutes to do so. As we're looking at some results come in, I'll switch over in just a moment.
So everybody should be answering that brief question, and then Phil's going to share the data with us.
All right, so let's pop over there.
Phil, just to
We'll
let you
get a
know.
link to you right now. I just saw that question. So
Yeah, okay, good. Just want to let you know that there was some request for a link.
Yep. Let
Thanks,
me get
Dan.
that link in the chat. We'll get it right over to you. One second. Go. And the link is now in the chat. And let's take a look at some of our results. So we're looking at this and realizing that around 40% of our participants are looking at Maryland Homeownership for the .com for the first time, which is great. That's why we felt it was so important to share the findings here and share the value of the resource. So again, we have about 50 people that have jumped on here, and I know there's a bunch more participants. That link to that poll is in the chat if you take a moment to fill it in.
Just a point of order. We have the chat disabled, so they might not be able to see the chat. Apologies to those people who can't take the poll. But we hope you have looked at marylandhomeownership.com. And we're here at Maryland Realtor staff are happy to help walk you through whatever you need to.
Thanks,
Right.
Dan. Something to notice was because the tool landed so well on the website, it was interesting. The first thing they wanted to know was, would my realtor send me there? Is that the first place they send me for information? It was just very interesting how once they were taken to the tool, started to use the tool, they started to feel more and more comfortable. Now you can always add new features and it'll continue to iterate and have more about compensation, right? When current issues come up, it's beautiful because we try to use that area to explain things more clearly. So it was just interesting. They wanted to know, is my realtor going to show me where all this is?
So taking us into our next poll question, we're just going to ask, how often do you, if you're familiar with MarylandHomeownership.com and all the resources that you have available, how often are you directing clients there to the Maryland Realtor specific resources? So if you want to pop that QR code into your camera view, you can check out the next question on our live poll. I'll leave it up here for just a couple minutes. Okay. Just one moment here. We're going to switch gears and get to the red QR code.
Bill, if you have the link, I can drop it in the chat to everybody.
Sure thing. One sec.
Thank you all for your patience. I know every time we add a new piece of technology, it's always exciting to know up to the minute, but we always say with it comes always some sort of little challenge to tweak. But we thank you because we truly wanted to know those that you were proactive enough to join the call, are you actively using the site? That was very important to us.
So this is the QR code up to the upper left of your screen if you would want to join there. Now we have some results coming in.
And Phil, if you want to send me that link, I'll drop it in for those that are
Yep.
using their phone.
Sending it right now.
Beautiful.
These percentages are so very interesting because, all of us in this environment continue to look for ways, tools, ways to educate. Everybody learns in a different way. I really hope that as a result of you being proactive and joining this call, spend a little time on the site. We're open to feedback. We even at the end will give you a place you can give feedback. Dan and team are always iterating and updating, but I want you to know that these sources can play an extremely valuable part of your education journey with prospective clients and clients.
I'm just going to pipe in over here. Our toolkits too, by the way, the seller guide and the buyer guide, they have opportunities for our members to personally brand it themselves. So you keep your brand in front while you're also sharing vetted information about the buying and selling process.
What I liked about using Maryland tools in the past when I was able to sell in Maryland was that I knew that it was all compliant. I knew that it was safe and compliant and accurate. I always felt like that made me more efficient than hoping that a campaign or something or tool I was building. I just always was concerned about legalities and so forth. So, Dan, thanks for chiming in. But seriously, if nothing else, 62% haven't incorporated. Now, you may not have had to, right? But could it be a strategy for outreach in gathering new people that aren't in your network right now for an outreach approach of education earlier in the process?
And for anybody who's on their phone and couldn't access the QR code, the link has been dropped in the chat.
All right, well, let's keep moving forward, I think.
What we're going to talk about now, and we're winding down our slide deck, and we'll certainly open up the floor for Q&A, and you can put your questions in the chat, and I know some of you have already. The key nugget that we found came up time and time again is they want to be working with someone earlier, not just when they're, when people like to say, us realtors, we show houses. Well, we know that you're trusted advisors that handle a very complex transaction. So that earlier, the realtor's ability to simplify the complex into something readily available. And then let's point me to resources that you trust, because if you trust them, we trust them. So what the beauty of all of this is it continues to help with what went on in the media, legal issues, false perceptions in the market. I just want to say that what it does is it allows us to strengthen public confidence that we are the go-to for all things real estate to help guide them objectively through the process. Go ahead. Just a quote. I always like to put a quote in my presentations. It's kind of my thing. When we lead with clarity, empathy, and education, we elevate consumer trust and the entire real estate profession. So what we want to encourage is, are there other tools that would be valuable? Do you see something that you'd like to see improvement on in the site that would be extremely valuable to be able to send your prospective clients and clients to? I just want to, again, thank you for taking time to walk through this journey with us, because the role of the financial advisor continues. They need help, they need hope, they need strategies well before they're ready to go out and tour homes, etc. And a good partner with a lender, which most of you already have, but to get them earlier in the process, if at all, there are strategies to do that. Again, whether it's offering a webinar series, whether speaking at a community meeting about these topics. And you may not feel like you are the financial guru, but you have years of experience in life's most complicated transaction. So if not, bring a guest to partner with you at those things to help you feel comfortable. We're now going to turn it over for Q&A. So we stand ready to answer any questions that you may have.
Do you want me to read what we have here so far? We have
Sure.
two questions and we have another one, but let's go with the first one. Affordable housing means different things to different people. In some cases, it means housing for someone who has low income. In some cases, it means workforce housing. And in other cases, it can mean finding a three-bedroom detached home under $600,000. Was the individual's definition of affordable housing discussed among the group? There's your question.
Thanks, Dan, very much. I will tell you, we talked about affordability in their perspectives of it, but what continued to radiate with the group, because what you have to remember is you need to get active participants that are willing to commit time for each session because we wanted consistency throughout the process. But really, affordability came down to the ability to buy a home. There wasn't a threshold, it wasn't sizing up, it was affordability predominantly to enter the buying market.
Thank you.
You're
Go to the
welcome.
next question. Uh, what were the income levels of individuals within the group?
I can jump in there.
Thank-
Two of our participants were under 50,000, two were in that 50 to 74,000, two were 75 to 100K, and then one was 100 to 125, and followed by the final that was over 200,000. So a decent spread.
Thanks, Phil.
Mhm.
You know, there was a question earlier, on, I don't know if you want to touch upon this. Somebody had asked, I answered it, but maybe you want to put a finer point on it. They asked, why so few people in a focus group? And maybe if you want to just explain that really quickly versus a traditional survey, that might give them a better perspective.
Yes, surveys are valuable, and certainly we know Maryland does that, and we appreciate, especially when the members take the time to respond. This was designed to be quality one-on-one time, like 90 minutes with these people face to face. Now, we did it via Zoom so that we wouldn't have restrictions. But a couple things you have to do. You have to be able to garner enough people. Yeah, I would have loved to have 100, but we wanted meaningful, intimate conversations. They have to give you 90 minutes. There was pre-work review. There was homework for each. So you really have to scrub to get a group of people committed to show up and be willing. Now, we will, exciting news, little teaser for 2026. We were engaged by Maryland Realtors to do a more expanded version for the coming year. This was the first version. It will go up in number of meetings and attendees, but not dramatically. You can't get a focus group of in-depth analysis feedback if you have a huge abundance of people in the room. So we do supplement with surveys and other things, but that was the mindset, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you. We had a comment from one of our members who also teaches a lot, wonderful Brenda Kasuva. She wanted us to share that and just reiterate what we've already talked about, that the Housing Opportunity Certification folks, which is now part of the Maryland Homeownership Advisory Group, helps us to vet this information to make sure that it's accurate. There's a question here on how to personalize the sellers and buyers guides. Really simply, I can answer that. You can download the PDFs of these documents. You can download them on marylandhomeownership.com. You can even download them at Maryland Realtors website. If you take them into Canva, an easy graphic applications app, you should be able, in the white space provided on the front page, to place your branding marks on there. And if you're not familiar with Canva, I'm sure somebody or one of your colleagues could give you a couple hints there. But that's what we're talking about when we're talking about personalization. And we do like to do that because we want to extend your knowledge base to the clients that you have. So thank you for that
Dan,
question.
if I could chime in for that as well.
Absolutely.
This is Kelly with Maryland Realtors. I'm the brand and content manager. There's a few different ways. Canva, absolutely. That's one of the easiest ways. But also, if you guys, we've seen realtors take their business cards and staple it to that first cover page right in that white space that's available. So that is another way to do that is either business card or even a sticker if you have one. There's a few different options in that regard. And then to chime in from what Brenda mentioned, the HOC certification is also an ability to have your name put on the Maryland Homeownership website. So if you take that certification class, you will be recognized on the Maryland Homeownership website.
Thank you. Thank
Kelly,
you.
that's a great point. And I was going to go back to Brenda. Everyone, when we go to associations across the nation and talk to members, they always want to know, how do I distinguish myself? How do I make myself unique? That is one great way to bring value and bring a differentiation to I don't know what the numbers are, Dan, for that certification, but it can be a distinguisher when they are searching for realtors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's move on to some other questions because we have a few here that we want to get through.
Sure.
Um, any major takeaways or resources available for sellers from these focus groups?
Interesting. The guides, the toolkits that you mentioned, Dan, obviously, and again, the conversation did go back a lot to desire and need, but the seller, we actually had one live seller too, found things complicated, felt that they didn't know, like for example, I'm going to have a discussion about compensation. I don't even know where the range begins. They need hand holding of information, even basic when they've bought and sold homes before. So that is some feedback that we gave back to Maryland Realtors too. They were very much, even saying like, we can't quote commission, but are we talking 3% or 30%, right? They were just saying they are not experts. So again, we only had one that was in a live sell position, but that was one of the things that they said would have been very helpful.
Thank you, Victoria. Another question, this one from Jeff. Read this one to you. I assume that participants were all predisposed to using a realtor. I find that millennials and younger folks will resist using a realtor, not because they don't need one, but because they either don't trust they don't trust realtors or believe that they are smart enough to do without it. How do you translate your findings in cracking open this consumer type?
Hey, great question, Jeff. Great question. Remember something. When we posed this, we did not give specifics about Maryland Realtors, and we did not say, hey, and I don't have the framework, the words right in front of me, but it was like more, do you want to be involved in the topic of housing affordability? Do you want to be involved in a program where you can share your input on what tools and information would be valuable? So we approached it from that standpoint. Then Phil went over the demographics of who actually agreed to see the journey forward with us in all consistent sessions. So I hope that helps.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Another anonymous question, more of a comment, but I think it's interesting. I'm actually a realtor that took your course. We're assuming the HOC course, and I have my certificate. I find that more education on credit scores can make a real difference regardless of income. Any comments on that?
Listen, you're talking to a banker for 20 years, right? I felt like I made my niche by letting people know the better your credit score is, the better terms you're going to get, right? Let's face it. The better your rate is, the better the credit score, the better the rate, the better your buying power. So I think everyone, it doesn't mean first time, second time. I don't think that is a first time buyer concern. It's an every buyer concern, especially in this economy. And I found even sellers were thrilled to know additional information because a seller could typically, they may be paying cash if they're downsizing, they may not be, and they may still be in a qualification standpoint. Leverage that information and find a partner that helps you get those points across early into an audience that could potentially be your client pool. Deanne, was there another that one was asking for the training schedule? And I know you posted online. Where else do you post this certification training schedule?
We do a lot. We post a lot of our educational opportunities in our Maryland Realtor Report. We encourage everybody to make sure they read that. Remember, that drops the first and third Thursday of every month. The latest Realtor Report should be in your mailbox because it was delivered today. And that's what this question is asking for. So I know a class started December 2nd. Unfortunately, today is December 4th, but I would suggest to look for dates in 2026. And once we know those dates, I'm sure we will post them. Oh, and here's somebody. And according to one of our education experts, look at our education calendar on the website. And that's always a good place to go. And if we can, Kelly, can you find the link to that and maybe put that in the chat as well?
Yes, I did drop the housing opportunity certification link
Awesome.
already in the chat, and that does take you directly to the calendar through that link.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
All set, Dan. I know we're nearing our time of closure. Love, love, love the questions and the engagement. Thank you for bearing with us through the polling. That was interesting. Are we good to close out, Dan?
Well, I'll just add one more comment. This is a
Sure.
nice one, courtesy of Brenda Kasuva. Again, we love her. The next HOC course is scheduled on February 3rd by the Prince George's County Association of Realtors. Save the date and look at that education calendar. I'm sure information will be there, and we'll go from there. So that rounds out all the questions. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Phil, for your time. I don't know if you have any closing comments, but
Real quick,
yeah.
I just want to say, Dan, thank you. Having been a 12-year Maryland Realtor, I just want to thank you and the team for constantly trying to bring more tools and resources. And there are so many. We just need to use them when we can or find a way to integrate them. They can save us some real time. This is our QR code. If feel free to stay connected with us. It's Victoria Gillespie Consulting. Just if we can help with anything with your own brokerage, anything with branding or clarity with the local association you may be with. I just want to thank all of you. I mean, you truly bring the dream of home ownership to life. I just want to thank you very much. I have the utmost respect for our realtor members and truly am grateful that you chose to spend an hour with us this afternoon. Connect with us, take a picture of the QR code, and find us on LinkedIn or Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. But thanks so much, Dan, for having us.
Thank you. And thank you all to our members who've attended this. And you can look for a recording of this webinar soon to be emailed to you. Have a great day. And if we don't speak, have a great holiday season. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.